City parks have always been important for quality of life, but they're increasingly valued for their effects on health, climate change, and the sense of equity. These are among the factors being addressed by candidates for mayor in responses to a questionnaire from Boston Park advocates. To tell us about the questionnaire and the candidate forum on June 29th is a member of the group's steering committee and executive director of All Dorchester Sports and Leadership, Candace Gartley. Thank you very much for being with us, Candace.
It's nice to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's talk about what we now sense more acutely as the importance of parks. And just by way of illustration, I'm thinking of a very familiar park for many in Boston, Franklin Park. I'm thinking these gathering spaces like the Playstead, the trees in the wilderness, all those paths where people like to go out for walks. What's so important about that?
Well, especially after the year we have just lived through, I think it has shown a light on the fact that people really rely on their green spaces and their parks to provide them with health benefits, mental health, physical health benefits. I know the Japanese call it forest bathing, and we've seen this past year. Our parks, open spaces have been inundated with people getting out. And I think last year was a focus on getting out and being away from people to be safe. Now that we've turned the corner on COVID, I think we're looking at green space to be a place where people can come together and celebrate again being together. So I think our parks have provided those opportunities in both being alone and now being together. So it's going to be an exciting year, a challenging year too, to try to accommodate the need that's starting to build up with our communities.
By the way, when you use that term green space, it's different now than it was the last time we had a new mayor being elected, because green space, it isn't just about the actual parkland itself. We're talking about any place where you've got trees. Why are trees so important?
Well, obviously the tree canopy is in terms of cleaning the air. I know we have very high rates of asthma in Dorchester, in the neighborhood where I live and where I work in Town Field by Fields Corner. There is, by removing the trees, and it encourages additional building and concretizing sort of the neighborhood, and that allows for runoff, which is not healthy in our neighborhoods too. So I think we haven't an emphasis on promoting trees, but hopefully through this next election, we can spotlight the incredible need for that. I know with development, a lot of the trees have been removed, but I think there's a way to have both camps satisfied. We just have to do it in a very smart way. We can't eliminate all the trees. They're so important for us to continue to have a healthy environment. And for me, I could see that last year once the traffic stopped and there was limited rush hour. I noticed it immediately in our flora, and things just grew. The flowers were better. The trees leafed out sooner, and it was remarkable. And I'm hoping that we won't go back to incredibly toxic air quality. So trees really need to be part of the conversation in a big way through this mayoral forum that we have now coming up.
On the Park Advocates website, you have responses to the organization's questionnaires from 5 of the 6 candidates for mayor. One thing I noticed in a lot of their responses is this concern about equity, that maybe some neighborhoods don't have it as good as others when it comes to access to parks. What about that?
Well, what we know is that neighborhoods of color have 13% less park space per resident than white neighborhoods. We also know that residents in low-income neighborhoods have 20% less park space and than higher income neighbors. I also know through my work at ADSL, we partner a lot with suburban communities, and they are very generous in helping us out with our programs and our environment. And they have very wealthy parks groups who support their parks with parents who run youth sports, they have arts and other events. And that is clearly a disparity for the parks that I see in my neighborhoods. It is really a struggle to try to help our neighbors who maybe have two jobs, single parent families who cannot devote the time to caring for the space that their families enjoy when they're not working.
One of the things I noticed in the questionnaire is what looks like a small amount of money. The difference between 0.75% of the city budget and 1.0. But this is about parks spending. I'm sure you think it's not just a little bit of money. Why is that difference so important?
You know, before I came here and I was situated in this park here, it didn't seem like a lot to me, but dealing with the day-to-day issues around park maintenance, and sending a message to our neighbors that they are important enough to have a park that is beautiful and welcoming and healthy and well-maintained, that small percentage will allow the parks to continue to grow their crews, for example, our baseball and softball crews. I believe there's only one in the city that go around to maintain our baseball fields. And for me, we experienced that a couple of weeks ago with the rain and trying to rapidly rehabilitate the playing field so that the adult and the children's leagues could play. And the Parks Department, they were spread very thin in trying to address that. Also in terms of tree maintenance, just general maintenance. In any case, I know the guys who handle us at Town Field, they have 8 other parks that they have to maintain on a daily basis. And there's really only 4 of them to do that. And I think increasing that amount by that percentage will allow the Parks Department to devote those funds to increasing the support to keep the city parks growing and getting better and to be more of a resource to the community.
I want to come back to the tree cover issue because there's a recent national study that shows that Boston, at least among large cities, has one of the highest disparities as far as tree cover, which means that neighborhoods where we have mainly people of color, they're more exposed to heat islands. So what about the city's ability to do something? The city has planted a lot of trees in recent years, but a lot of them have died. So what do you do about that?
Well, that's a good question. I know big investments were made under Mayor Walsh, but much more is needed. Boston ranks 23rd in park spending among the 100 largest US cities. We can do better than that. I think by amping up the budget in the Parks Department, we will be able to pay attention and revisit these tree plantings to increase them. We have to stay the course to make sure that we continue this. I see those heat islands here all over my neighborhood in the park here constantly. It's not going to go away unless we pay attention to it.
Yes, I want to come down to what's planned in the forum, and as far as how participants can shape what candidates are going to be saying. What about the audience participation, even though this is a virtual event?
Well, we're hoping, and we've really sent out the word to everybody. It's you have a choice in how your park is going to look in the next administration and hopefully years beyond. I think we really want to pull the focus in on what the candidates are thinking about in terms of paying attention to our environment and our green space. I know there are a lot of other issues out there on their plates, and they go to forums every night just about to talk about different issues. But I think parks and green space has to be on the forefront. And we're really hoping that the people who tune into this forum sort of hold their feet to the fire and say, we want you to think about this and to be very thoughtful about how you would like to approach the improvement of city parks and green spaces.
I want to ask you about how you structure things, because you asked the candidates for a very definite answer on that budget question, 0.75 or 1.0. One candidate gave you a definite yes. I believe it was Andrea Campbell, but another candidate, Michelle Wu, she was not as definite, but there were a lot of ideas. So to me, that seems that there's no one right answer to these questions, but any answer maybe can tell you a lot. What do you feel?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of candidates, and there is a broad perspective on parks. And I really don't think the parks have been on the front burner for many of these candidates. So I don't think that there has been much deep thought by the candidates about how they want to address this issue. So my hope is that this will really, as I said before, bring it into focus for them and say, this is important to a lot of people. And really, I think we have the example of this past year to refer to, where it was very clear to me that people needed a place to go, to get out. This year, it's a recovery year, but people need a place to come together, to safely interact with each other, to participate in activities. And it's up to us to send this really clear and very strong message to the candidates that this is a really important issue that they have to pay attention to, along with the other issues they have. But this is right front and center for so many people in this city, and it's been highlighted so clearly over this past year. We really need to stay on top of this and make sure that they pay attention to this issue.
And finally, we should let our viewers know about the time of the forum and how they can engage with this.
So the forum is going to take place on, it is on the 29th of June. And it is going to be from 6 to 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. If you go onto our website, you'll be able to get more information, and you can find out how to register. You also, if there's an organization and you would like to show your support for this forum, you can also list yourself as a supporting organization. Right now, we have about 85 organizations in Boston who have signed on to support this issue. And hopefully that will send a message to our candidates that they really have to pay attention to this. And just by signing on to the forum and asking the questions and continuing to be involved in how our parks evolve over the next administration, I think this forum is just the beginning of doing that. And hopefully the Boston Parks Advocates will provide other opportunities for the community at large to weigh in and check back in with once the election is done, to make sure that promises are kept.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Oh, it was great talking to you again, Chris. I appreciate the time.
Good to see you. Candace Gartley from Boston Park Advocates. And by the way, you can get more information from the website, bostonparkadvocates.org, and you can register for the forum by going to parkforum.net. We'll have more news in just a moment.